a high-profile assassination attempt in the den of millionaires. In Monaco, there was an attempt to blow up top Ukrainian oligarch Vadim Yermolayev, a shadowy figure who first literally rebuilt an entire major Ukrainian city to suit himself and then came under harsh personal sanctions from President Zelenskyy. And while the country was at war, he quietly settled in the loudest VIP resort for those fleeing the war, the so-called Monaco Battalion.
Dnipro businessman Vadim Yermolayev, who ranks 45th on the list of the richest people, arrived in a Bentley.
Who is he really? Where did he get hundreds of millions of dollars in his accounts? And most importantly, who exactly sentenced the oligarch to death and why did they decide to eliminate him? Subscribe to the channel and give us a like. Let's get started. On the evening of June 29th, at around 9 o'clock local time, an explosion occurred in the lobby of a residential building on Reverend Père Louis Frola Street. The incident took place just a few meters from the French border. Shortly before that, surveillance cameras captured a man wearing light-colored pants, a black jacket, and a dark hat that concealed his face. The local resident left a backpack near the entrance and walked away in the direction of the neighboring town of Beausoleil in France. As soon as the door closed behind him, a family began to enter the building. At that very moment, the device detonated. According to Monaco's head of government, Christophe Meerman, the homemade device contained bolts and metal pellets intended to increase the blast radius and cause maximum harm to people nearby. 3 people were injured, a man and a woman both around 50 years old, as well as a 13-year-old teenager. The adults, who were in critical condition, were hospitalized at the Pasteur Medical Center in Nice. The child, who was in a more stable condition, was admitted to the Lenval Children's Clinic. In addition, 4 more witnesses sought help due to cuts from glass shards and severe shock. The emergency security protocol Plan Rouge was immediately activated in the Principality. Additional gendarmerie posts were deployed at the border with France, particularly near the La Turbie toll station. Prosecutor Thibault Stephan confirmed that sappers and forensic experts are working at the scene. Witnesses still cannot believe what happened. One of the local residents, originally from Brazil, commented to the press that such incidents happen in other parts of the world, but for Monaco, this is a real shock. Christophe Meerman emphasized that this is the first such case in the entire history of the state, which is traditionally known for having one of the lowest crime rates in Europe. A key detail of the case is that the victims were not random people. The attack was carried out on the family of Vadim Yermolayev, a well-known entrepreneur from Dnipro whose assets are under personal sanctions imposed by the president of Ukraine. He is also one of the main figures in a high-profile investigation into domestic millionaires who moved to the French Riviera during the war. Because of this, law enforcement is treating the incident not as an accident but as a planned assassination attempt. To understand the motives, it is worth analyzing his life path from the early stages of his activities in Dnipropetrovsk to achieving the status of one of the richest and at the same time most controversial players in Ukrainian business. Vadim Yermolayev was born in Dnipropetrovsk. After finishing school and studying at the College of Technology and Economics, he served in the army. He built his initial capital at the end of the 1980s by trading alcohol and building materials. In 1995, together with his partner Stanislav Zelenskyy, he founded the company Primus Inter Pares. Translated from Latin, it means first among equals. Just 2 years later, this enterprise was transformed into the Aleph Trade and Industrial Corporation. The following decades were marked by the rapid growth of the holding. Such well-known landmarks of Dnipro as Novi Center, Most City, Cascade Plaza, Bosphorus, Enigma, and Prisma were built or financed by the businessman's enterprises. Forbes magazine classified the developer as one of the 5 most influential entrepreneurs in the city. In 2020, Aleph returned to the construction of the Brahma complex. One of its towers, at 54 stories, was set to become the tallest residential skyscraper in the country. At the same time, the investor launched the largest biomass-fired CHP plant in Ukraine and a dental implant manufacturing plant. Estimates of the businessman's capital varied depending on the source. On the eve of the full-scale invasion, Forbes Ukraine estimated his assets at $221 million, while Dragon Capital had previously valued them at over $300 million. In any case, this secured him a permanent spot among the top 100 richest people in Ukraine. However, alongside the development of his empire, another line of activity was taking shape, which ultimately led to government restrictions, the loss of citizenship, and quite possibly to the events in Monaco. In 2017, the entrepreneur gave up his Ukrainian passport in favor of a Cypriot one. In comments to Forbes, he explained this decision as a desire to obtain international legal protection due to claims against the domestic tax and judicial systems. At the time, he also expressed his commitment to Ukraine, stating that he stayed within its territory for the entire permitted period and planned to develop projects here after victory. At first, this seemed like a private decision made by a wealthy individual, but subsequent events revealed the real reasons behind such a move. According to the Security Service of Ukraine, after the occupation of Crimea, the structure Aleph Vinal Krim continued its operations on the peninsula, undergoing re-registration under Russian law through nominal persons. The company's tax payments began to go to the budget of the Russian Federation. Journalists calculated that in 2021 alone, the company's revenue reached 2.5 billion rubles, and the amount of taxes paid to the aggressor totaled about 490 million. According to media reports, similar mechanisms were used at enterprises in occupied Berdyansk. Thus, while one part of his fortune secured him a place in Ukrainian rankings, other areas of his business had for years been financing the treasury of the state waging war against his former country. In this situation, a paradox can be observed. In 2022, as a result of a strike on the Dnipro airport, his private jet worth about 23 million euros was destroyed. This fact was publicly used by Kommersant as evidence of its own losses from Russian aggression, and his company filed a lawsuit with the Dnipro Commercial Court seeking to recover 259 million hryvnias in compensation from Russia. At the same time, his other entities continued to fill the budget of the aggressor country with taxes from occupied Crimea. It was precisely the activities in the annexed territories that became the official reason for dismantling his legal protection. In December 2023, President Zelenskyy enacted the decision of the National Security and Defense Council to impose personal sanctions on Yermolayev for a period of 10 years. Despite the sanctions, the holding's activities did not cease, but instead underwent a legal transformation. In the fall of 2024, according to Hromadski investigators, the management of part of the assets was formally re-registered to his 21-year-old daughter, entrepreneur Sofia Kononenko, who was residing between London and Cyprus. In June of last year, the National Security Council expanded the sanctions list to include related beneficiaries of subsoil user companies. And already in December, at the request of Interpol, his son Artur Yermolayev was detained in Cyprus. He is the former head of the Ukrainian Esports Federation, whose name was linked to the activities of illegal call centers. Foreign citizenship, nominal companies in Crimea, and transferring property to his children formed three lines of defense that Yermolayev had been building for nearly a decade. At the same time, he and his family were living a completely different life in that very Monaco where the explosion occurred on June 29th. His wife Hannah, a dentist by profession, is the founder of Amal Dental Clinic and the head of the Kiddo charity organization. The couple is raising 4 children. Back in August 2022, the authors of Ukrainska Pravda documented the presence of Ukrainian business and political figures on the French Riviera, calling this phenomenon the Monaco Battalion. Yermolayev became one of its most prominent representatives. His heavily guarded residence is located in Saint-Jean-Cap-Ferrat, and vehicles with domestic registration have been regularly spotted near the casino in Monte Carlo. According to media reports, the entrepreneur's activities were also investigated by the State Bureau of Investigation in the context of a case concerning the departure of conscripted citizens after the start of the full-scale invasion. At present, the main question regarding the perpetrators and motives of the crime remains unanswered. The Monaco prosecutor's office officially classifies the incident as a probable terrorist attack, refraining from bringing specific charges or confirming any particular version. Various hypotheses are appearing in the press, from consequences of activities in Crimea to conflicts surrounding call centers or purely criminal disputes unrelated to the war. None of these assumptions have official evidence. Investigators continue to search for the suspects seen on surveillance cameras and are trying to determine whether the attack was specifically targeted at Yermolayev. However, one fact speaks for itself, even without any conclusions from the investigation. The security measures that had been implemented over 9 years, the change of citizenship, nominal structures, and redistribution of ownership were all meant to protect the businessman from external risks. However, the events at a location considered a model of safety revealed the vulnerability of these barriers. Can vast wealth, foreign passports, and elite real estate guarantee absolute inviolability? Or will the bill still have to be paid? The question remains open. Share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to the channel, and follow the further development of this story. That's all for now. See you in the next episode.